Welcome, everyone, to the Scale Lab. I'm Joe Wilson, the token American, and I'm here with my partner in crime. So if I'm the ketchup, then I guess he's the mayonnaise. Constantijn, who's our guest today?
Just figuring out the sauce here. Yeah, of course I'm mayonnaise. I'm from the Netherlands. Yes, of course. Add a bit of mustard there too. Well, our guest is no one less than Robert Vis of MessageBird. That's made some incredible strides in the last few months even. It's really hard to keep up. It's used to be years and now it goes from month to month to strength. And actually that's what I would like to ask my first question is from a company that was pretty under the radar, suddenly, these incredible rounds and then starting to acquire many other companies, you've had so many roles as a CEO. Do you ever ask yourself if you're the right person still in that function and how long you will stay in that role?
Great question. Yes. I ask myself that a lot. But I have to say I've actually I feel quite comfortable where I am at the moment. But I look at this in 3-year increments because I think that's a reasonable time frame for the business and the responsibility. So I'm 37, I'll be 40. I always said I'm stopping when I'm 40. So let's see what I do in 3 years. But for now, I feel pretty good about the role. But yeah, it's a challenge, obviously. You have to reinvent yourself many times.
Yeah, because acquiring companies, integrating them is very different than just growing a company. All the cultural issues, and was that a big issue for you, or was that just the rational thing to do, and just went ahead and saw basically how to deal with it as things came along?
Yeah, because I read somewhere that you said, if that's okay to quote you, to you, that you were like, we want to integrate. If we're going to bring a company in, we got to make it all one thing. We're not trying to run separate bits and pieces here. Is that?
No, that's very much true. Singularity in platforms. So, and it's a very important focus that we have to not keep things separate, but to actually integrate them together. The thing about acquisition, so we've done a few acquisitions in the past, so we had a little bit of experience with it. We've done 5 acquisitions in the past 12 months. We raised money twice, so I would say we're still learning. This is a whole different scale that we.
So what you're doing is just basically a learning thing.
Yeah,
the raising and the acquiring.
Yeah, we're moving at 200 miles an hour at scale. Yeah. But yeah, the belief is still the same. So we want to integrate things together, and these decisions are driven very simply by our customers. So our customers are asking us to do stuff, and we make the decision: do we build, partner, or buy? And for our customers, it's mostly either build or buy. For privacy, security, we're in communication, so that's super important. So yeah, we pick our targets. We're pretty methodical on what we do and which target we pick and why, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. So we just don't, as much as some people think we just go around spending money after raising money, we actually know pretty much what we're doing and why. But yeah, integration is a challenge, and technical integration is a challenge. But we do a lot of research beforehand to make sure that we feel confident on achieving our goals.
Okay, I got to pick at this just for a second, because when I look at the acquisitions, my first thought, outside of the business value, of course, that you guys are, is that concept of the technical integration that's on the back end. It's so easy to find someone that does exactly what you want them to do, and you'd love to have as a part of your business, but platforming together could be a nightmare. And I know this is a bit of a geek out for people who are on the technical side, but are you making choices? Are you looking at the technology at the same time that you look at the business? Or are you saying, no, that's the business you want to be in, we'll make the technology work?
Team tech business. So business actually comes last. Mostly focused on the team.
Tech, business, that's
mostly the team, because those are the people that have to work with us to build it. So we would never acquire something where the founders aren't involved or the founders want to get out of a certain line of business. We want them to be involved and build with us. Tech obviously is super important to us, so it has to be something that makes sense to us. And how did they build it? But any large scale business has some legacy, so that stuff happens. And the business metrics are important, but that depends on the size of the acquisition. The larger, obviously, business metrics are super important, just given the money you're spending. Smaller acquisitions, we care much less about the business metrics.
But I mean, these people have been building that technology, and then you come along and you basically integrate everything, don't they? How do you ensure that they still stay motivated, that what they have built is now no longer theirs? Or how do you go about that?
I mean, a lot of the with the exception of the last acquisition we did, SparkPost, the email company, where the founder's still very much involved, but it was run by a professional executive team. The previous acquisitions have all been founder led, so it's basically me spending a lot of time with them, and just to make absolutely sure, is this something they're motivated to do? Are they, they've been the CEO of a company, they've built it. Are they willing to now become a product manager or do something else? But it's interesting because a lot of the times as a founder or entrepreneur, you're really passionate about the products that you're building. And I think we have a very compelling story how they can continue to drive that product at much larger scale into more customers, more geographies. So far, this hasn't been a problem for us. Most people work really well and do well and build great products.
Maybe go back to the start of your entrepreneurial journey, at least with MessageBird.
Yeah, after the acquisition, boom, right there in the middle. Well, let's go back and see.
Yeah, no.
So for those of you who don't know, Robert, let's
no,
see
because as you were saying, it's client driven. How do you know you were client driven from the start, and how do you ensure that you had product market fit, and how did that inform your strategy?
I mean, customer focus has been something that we've had from day one. Customers give you the answers to all decisions you should ever make. It's like very, very simply, just listen to your customers, talk to your customers, iterate based on your customers. So that customer feedback's been super important from the very first day that we ever started the business.
I mean, everybody says this. Not everybody really means it, just to be clear. So, but this is for you like an original tenet.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can give you an
we're not going to go outside of. I mean,
no, I can give you an example. I mean, last week a customer emailed me really angry. I mean, we have over 30,000 customers, so sometimes we make a mistake, and the customer is really frustrated and really angry. I still respond to every single customer email, whether they reach out to me on LinkedIn or my email, and usually I respond within like 30 minutes, no day and night, unless I'm sleeping. So I would say myself, the team, I would say has that customer focus always.
So it's genetic for you guys now.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. I mean, I think there's so many people, so many CEOs, regardless of the size of the company, that kind of start with the customer focus pitch. You know what I mean? But they don't live it. They don't breathe it necessarily. They get wound into the product outside of the customer requirements per se, and they can get lost.
Well, it's really hard because we've made a ton of mistakes as well. I mean, in scaling the business, you sometimes make decisions that, might hurt a customer or make customers upset. I think for us, everything's a journey. So we try to do our best every day and sort of get there. And when customers really, need something, we try to fix it as quickly as possible. But I wouldn't also sit here and say we're great to all customers. We've always done amazing. Like, we've made a ton of mistakes. I think we just always try to learn from them and do better.
And does the customer also drive your expansion? Do you follow your customer, or how do you go about developing a new market?
Sometimes. I mean, definitely not a singular customer. So something we've also been pretty methodical on is we build stuff for scale, which means many customers. So if a single customer wants to go to a single geo, and it's easy for us to do, we'll do it. So we'll definitely try. But if we think that makes no sense for us in a broader scale, then we would also just say no. Saying no is also one of the hardest things to do, but also something that we're very focused on.
What is a big thing you said no to?
One of our customers wanted to go into a region in the world where we felt it was a compromising region, sanctioned. And then you get into whole types of stuff around, communications and whether people have the right to communicate. So this stuff goes pretty deep. And I feel very passionate about this topic, also about privacy and stuff. These are things that are personal to me, very, very, very passionate. I believe people should have the right to communicate, and that supersedes governments. But we still decided not to do it.
Can we segue into values? for a bit. So you said these are very important values to me. How do those translate into to the company, and what values are kind of what's the value set? What's the top of your value list?
I mean, privacy, data protection is one of the most important. MessageBird will never sell data of customers, of consumers. It's just something I'm very, very against.
At the individual level.
At an individual level. So we will use data of our customers to give a better customer experience. I mean, we provide technology for that, whether that's customer service tooling or stuff like that. But we will never, ever go into the data business. I'm actually going to make that one of our foundational principles of the...
I mean, the thing you just said is more at the aggregate level, right? You're saying, look, our learnings across the system will inform our decisions, but you're saying at the individual level, that's yours, and we will never sell that.
Yeah.
And has it worked for the company commercially as well?
It's hard to make that. I mean, we also don't supply data to governments, for example. I mean, this goes pretty far for us, and we're really strict. I mean, you will have to sue us to get data at some points. I don't know if that's a commercial decision. It's just something I want to be able to sleep at night and feel good about it. I don't think I would feel good if MessageBird was in the business of selling consumer data. Other people have a different opinion. That's fine. But the way we run the company, that's a no for us.
I'm just picking at it because it just to find out if some people might say like with the environment, that but that's going to cost us. Our competitors are doing it, and so but maybe it actually benefits you because it's a way to establish yourself as a company, differentiate yourself, and it's maybe possibly part of the brand. Because is it also part of the brand? Is this something you've actively promoted?
No, it potentially we're just doing a bad job product marketing that, and we should. But I don't think we promote that today in a way. Besides that, obviously the employees' internal promotion, yes, but externally, we don't feel the need right now to go into that.
If we can go back to the place we were going to go back to, like early on, there was moments, and again, I'm going to look for these moments that other entrepreneurs can learn from. There was a moment probably where you guys were sitting back and you had your initial products in the market and all that, and you had this kind of like, oh shit, this might actually get big, or it might run, it might really, really work. That's that kind of epiphany on product market or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of cliche words. Can you remember that moment and what was it like for you guys, and maybe were there any decisions that came out of that?
I mean, I think we were very fortunate because I think that moment came day one.
Day one.
Yeah. So like Adrian and I were working on a company called Zapay, which was a API to pay for virtual goods on your mobile phone bill. And he had actually started an API on SMS when he was 18. So the history of Molly, now one of Europe's biggest payment companies, actually started an SMS when he was 18 in his attic, classical text story. And when we were working on Zapay, one of our suppliers actually came to us and asked, hey, can you do messaging for us too?
Just SMS.
Just SMS. And we were like, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll fix that. As an entrepreneur, you always say yes to everything. And what actually happened is they sent so much volume that it crashed everything, crashed all servers. It just basically blocked everything. But that did give us the idea, hey, this is kind of interesting. There's like a whole world out there that we don't know of scale. Of like this telecom thing, SMS, what's really going on. And that's how we decided to start the company. So Renee, Bob, Ehop, and I basically started with that one customer that we completely messed up back then, but they were willing to give us another try. And Adrian had built like this really intuitive admin system to manage something. So we had a little bit of leverage there. And we started building the tech. And we basically built what I think people probably don't appreciate. We built a core mobile network from the ground up. Every little piece of our tech is built in-house. We never outsourced anything. We never worked with third parties. We built everything from day one. It was a complete shit show for the first year in terms of accounting and revenue. We knew more money was coming in than was going out. So that was like it's
a good sort of rule of thumb, I guess.
It was a very important part of the metrics, but we were more focused on performance, throughput, cost, quality, things like that. And
you were tuning the machine.
Just tuning the machine, but it worked from day one. Like our first customer was a customer called MBlocks. I think our second customer is SAP. And we went from 0 to 4 million in revenue in the first 12 months.
Yeah.
And profitably. So we actually paid taxes our first year. So that's pretty unique. So we knew we knew the very first day. This is
But
going
you
to
had
work.
Zapay, and was it that the messaging felt bigger than the payments, or just
Much
that was
big.
okay.
Yeah, the thesis back then for mobile payments, I mean, which is different today because mobile payments now is because remember, this is 10, 12 years ago. So this wasn't when we had mobile phones like we do today. So the thesis was that carriers were going to become payment companies because they had the consumer relationship, and they were trying to pivot away from becoming dumb bit pipes, and they should have. But we saw that going nowhere just because working with the carriers, they were so big and had no idea about innovation or technology that we were like, this isn't going to go anywhere. So we actually sold Zapay, I think, in the first 6 months of MessageBird. We got an acquisition offer from Velti, and we were just like, goodbye. This is way more fun. It was much more on fun. And that we found the technical part so interesting of like we had like a throughput meter with like messages per second. And then first it was like 0, 1. And then it was like 1 all the time. And then 2 all the time. And now it's like 10,000 all the time. So it's like, we found that way more challenging way more interesting than back then running mobile payments.
And when was the moment that you felt in control of your company? It sounds a bit like it was you were on a rodeo bull, and it was going in some direction. But when did you feel that you were in control and that you wanted to take it up to the next level?
And it's actually an interesting Dutch story because about 9 to 12 months in Amber Alert came. Amber Alert Netherlands, they had a supplier for messaging, and obviously when a child goes missing, they send the broadcast out. I believe, don't hold me to this, back then it was like 200,000 numbers. Now it's like way above 1 million. And their problem was that the delivery was taking an hour and a half for the messages to reach subscriber's phone. And obviously with the importance of a child going missing, that wasn't unacceptable. And pretty lean and mean back in the day, they were like, we're so unhappy. Are you able to do this? And while we were in the negotiation of this, an Amber Alert happened, and they were like, do you trust that you can do this better? And I remember sitting there with the team thinking like, if we miss this, we're going to be in the cover of the entire news, and people are going to, like, we might take down the business. Do we want to do this? And we felt it was, one of my co-founders had just had a baby, and he was like, no, like, let's go. We're going to go do this. And so we did it. And I think our first time was 25 minutes. So it was a lot better than what the other supplier. I think now we do over 1 million in under 8 minutes.
Gee, why does it take so long?
Yeah, so as consumers, we don't get this, right? We're all like, wait, isn't everything instant? Press a button, come on, man.
This goes super deep. It's pipes to the carrier. Our pipes to the carriers are so strong that we could take down the entire consumer network. I mean, we have to ask for approvals.
So you're throttling?
Yeah, we're throttling all the time. Yeah, you're basically throttling, and you have to do, I think it was back then Queen's Day, now King's Day. If you remember that if a lot of people are consumed together, then sometimes you don't have reach with your phone, and the reason is just there's too much congestion on the pole that you're connecting to. We've done an Amber Alert on King's Day with congestion, and then you're basically going so deep in the network that you're throttling poles to make sure that you can reach subscribers at the right time.
So that their message actually gets delivered and doesn't just get stuck in the system, I guess.
Yeah, and that's when we started getting control, because that was your question, because that's when compliance became super important. So about 12 months in, we were like, okay, we really have something, and we have something that can be meaningful. But we got to sort our stuff out. So we built everything around compliance, 4I principles, to make absolutely sure that both on a accounting level all the way to a security level, that we were always top notch.
So on a product side, what you just described is a machine capacity that's still waiting for a catcher to match it. Right, the system in which the networks in which you play, you're still waiting for them to operate at a level that could handle the same amount of speed and capabilities that you do as a company, you guys could provide as a company.
MessageBird's never the problem.
No,
it's always the carriers.
That's super interesting to think, because you guys are omni-channel now, right? And so you've got all these different methods. I assume telecom is one type of throttling, and maybe it's in the other spaces you have to throttle, maybe you don't. In the IP world, you don't.
It's a different problem set. Throttling is important all across communications, but it's a different problem set. So it can be, and you get into compliance of, like, in India, you can't send messages between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. unless it's a 2FA password. And so you get more into routing rules and what do you do? And then obviously there's stuff like spam, and then you have like WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook and WeChat and email, and when do you send what message? So it becomes much more about when do you send what type of communication to reach X, whatever that goal is. Yeah, today it's surprising. Today, SMS is actually only 25% of our business. So where we started, we've diversified pretty hard into other areas.
Sure.
And you can take it back to less technical levels, if you don't mind.
Yes, we can.
I know you'd like to dive into this, but I think you've now lost about 80% of our audience.
I apologize to all 80%.
Thank you for that.
I hope 80% of the audience is technical.
But
at least enough for that interaction.
Let's talk
right?
to SS7 networks and signaling, and come on.
No, because we often ask, where do you choose between perfection and momentum? It sounds like you are very much on the momentum side, but then this compliance thing came, and that sounds like perfection. You have to nail that down. How did that stop your business? How do you deal with that?
It's always a balance between the two, perfection and momentum, and you have to pick and choose your battles. I think we draw a hard line on some things. So just like I talked about, privacy being important. I mean, this stuff was important from day one. So day one, 12 months, basically the first year, this stuff was important. Like compliance, like who has access to content of messages? What can you do? What do you do for certain types of customers? How do you like? We built all this tech in-house. So again, we didn't outsource anything. We built everything in-house, all our compliances, all our reconciliation for our accounting. This goes pretty far, but like it was just really important to us to nail it down. It's like building a house. If you get the foundation done really well, you can endlessly scale. Yeah. If you miss the foundation and you wait too long, then you get into all the problems we now see with a lot of the big tech companies, that they just didn't build that from day one. And then it's really hard to go back. So I'm sure a lot of these companies aren't intentionally trying to like do some of the stuff that's coming out, but it's just probably a really hard tech problem for them to solve at the scale that they're at now to go back and fix it. I think we were fortunate to
Fortunate, or is it deliberate? I mean, fortunate
Sounds
and deliberate.
Well, it was deliberate, but I was trying to be nice. No, it was deliberate. No, we knew that this was going to be important. And if you go back to values, this was important to me. It was very important that we would build a good company that was going to do good in the world. And this was important. People shouldn't have access to contents of messages. That's pretty clear, right? I don't think anybody listening would think that that's logical that people would have access to that content. So we just made sure they couldn't.
But you seem like a details guy.
A little bit.
How do you combine that with being also the founder, CEO of the company, and this kind of degree of detail and passion for tech, clearly?
It's a challenge sometimes. I mean, it's about what I've learned. It's about context, not control. So there's a couple of things that are really important. You want to provide the right context to your teams for them to be able to make the right decisions. It's not about controlling their decision making. That's where autonomy goes wrong. Like, people need to make their decisions, but I think it's important for not just myself, but the leadership team and managers to give the right context of what we're trying to achieve, what are the right business objectives, and how do we get there. And details are important. I believe in detail orientedness in a business. What I'm very against is this whole millennial behavior of like, I am who I am, and you shouldn't ask the question why. I think it's really important to ask the question why. Why are you making the decisions that you're making? And it's fascinating because the really good, excellent people never have an issue with the question why. They actually like it because it leads to feedback, and they really appreciate feedback. It's much more folks that are not so confident in their decision making, or were a bit sloppy, who hate the question why, and then conversations go all over the place. So details are super important at MessageBird, but we provide context. We don't control their decision making.
Is there? I mean, this is you said this, and you also said team, tech, business in that order. So let's talk about talent or team. Again, in these moments along the way, were there any particular hires or particular big, kind of company organizational decisions that made a difference? And again, I'm looking for those lessons for the others who are listening. So, when it comes around talent, maybe you have a general philosophy, or there's some moments that made a big difference.
I think for us, it's hard because it wasn't about a certain individual or a certain person who made the difference. I think one of the questions, that you just asked about CEO is like, you have to be able to create a team. You can't do it all yourself. So the ability to create a team is really important. And then teams make decisions, and you basically want to spend all your time trying to automate yourself away. That's where I spend most of my time, trying to make sure that I don't have to be in a meeting, which leads me to time to think. If I would go back as the learning, CFO and head of people, besides the obvious of tech, which if you're a tech company, you should obviously have great tech people. But like, I think a really great CFO and a really great head of people will solve a lot of headaches, and you should over-invest there, not under-invest.
And hire them earlier than you think.
Hire them way earlier than you think. Make them partners. Give them lots of shares, and hire folks that have seen scale way beyond the scale that you've seen, so that they can prevent you. You still need generalists, so you have to be a bit careful that you don't hire too much of a specialist. If somebody that's run 1,000-person company or 5,000 probably isn't the best person when you're 10 people in a garage. But you got to sort of find that balance between the two. But those two functions you're a business, so you need great finances, the CFO, and in order to scale quickly, you need to be able to manage your team well, which you need a head of people to be able to do that.
I just want to go and explore a few of the steps that you made, or kind of big decisions that you think were pivotal for MessageBird. And one I want to preempt, because I'm personally very interested in that. Why, if you were already doing that kind of revenue so early on, did you decide to go to Y Combinator?
Ooh, I like this question. And I'll make it more blunt. Why did I give them 7% of the company?
Yeah,
for
why you 7% of the company? You were doing really well. What were you expecting to get out of it?
It's funny. It's the best. I continue to say this. It's the best. It's one of the best decisions that I've made. So we could. What I wanted to get out of YC was, we knew the US was a big market. And we wanted to go kick down doors, and we just signed Uber as a customer. We basically had one of our competitors that lost $1 billion of value, which back then was like a third of their value because we'd taken that customer. So we had like great momentum. We felt really good about that. And we wanted more of those customers. And YC was sort of a stamp that you could go to. That was, I think, my very first intention. And then a personal intention, which was, I wanted to see, when you live in Roman times, you would have wanted to live in Rome. And when you're in tech, you want to live in Silicon Valley. So I wanted to see it. So I combined those two. I applied. I was actually the latest company to also ever get into YC.
Latest in terms of maturity.
Well, back then, latest in maturity, but also I think I applied a week before the first day of YC, which would be a very Robert thing
Tardiest
to do.
as well.
And it's interesting. I thought that they would negotiate with me. And when they called that we got in, and it was very nervous. I mean, we went through the same problem. People think that people are so nice in the tech scene in Silicon Valley. People are tough. Like, you go in for an interview and you sit there. I don't remember what the time frame was, like 5 minutes or 9 minutes, and on the clock it ends. There was like not even a single question anymore. And then I remember Aaron saying, "I really hoped you enjoyed your time in San Francisco." And I was like, did he just tell me I did not get in without telling me yet? And I was like, I was all like freaking out. I was like, because I really wanted it, and I was all. So
you're reading into it.
I was completely reading into it. And then he called me that night, because basically the rule is you get a call, you get in, and if you don't get in, you get an email. So it's a very binary thing. I think I even sent them a pitch email because I couldn't wait so long.
Like preemptive strike.
Yeah,
there.
I sent them a preemptive strike, which again is like something that, like, I no arrogance there. I was just gonna go bang, like I wanted it, so I was gonna push for it very, very hard.
You're going after it. Yeah,
I was going after it. And then he called me and he said, "You got in," and I was like, "Great." And what about the percentage? And he's like, "Well, it's gonna be 7%." And my response, I think, literally was, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And I felt really bad about that later. I was like,
because you thought, well, we're so far ahead.
Yeah, they're going to negotiate.
They're going to want. They'll expect less because of where we are. Or something, right?
Yeah, and they didn't negotiate, and I again pushed hard. Yeah. At what point? And I spoke to Sam, and then Sam was like, "Hey, Robert, like, look, if you want to withdraw, you're happy to withdraw and let Aaron know." Like, it was super tough, and This was a day before. I remember this very clearly. It was a day before their very first opening, and I decided to do it. And their argument was simple: like, we're going to provide so much value that we're worth the 7%, and you'll find out. And they were right, and I was wrong. Like the arrogance for me to think that I just because I was at a certain scale that I should have negotiated that and give them a lesser percentage was complete unnecessary arrogance, because they provided more value than I could have ever imagined. And that had nothing to do for us with raising money, because we didn't raise money until a year later. But if they show you a bar that you've never seen before, and I mean, I have so many stories from my funniest story was probably that we were feeling quite good. We grew 120% that year as a company, so we were feeling quite good about it. And again, Aaron came up to me. He was like, "Robert, you should stop feeling so good about yourself. When Airbnb was your scale, they were growing 500% year on year. Stop feeling good and go back to work." And it was just, and there's like, I could probably name 10 anecdotes like that. It was just that utter
This is a
focus.
difference in perception of scale, I think, right? I can remember personally in my career when I've sort of realized that I had to think in billions instead of thousands or something like that. But this is what this sounds like, is you're negotiating in your brain the difference in what you perceive scale to be and what, say, Aaron in this case, or those guys perceive scale to be. And you're now sort of, it's like someone opened up the ceiling and you stepped up and went, wait a second, it's a universe-sized thing here that I didn't see before. Am I getting that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I thought we'd built a really big, successful business. And probably at that point we were in the Netherlands. And they showed me I wasn't even close to going anywhere. And then there's the network and the people, and that it's only
and how is that motivating for you? I mean, if the gap is too big, I can imagine you say, well, okay, but how did maybe if you take yourself back to that time, what did it do to you, and what do you think, and how do you think about communicating that to your team? Because you were leading a team at this level, and someone tells you from the outside, sorry, Robert, but you've been underperforming, and your team, and you've been leading your team at that pace. What does it do to you?
Well, I remember first coming into San Francisco, and I felt fear that I couldn't do it. People were so smart, and I was like, I'm not that smart. I can't. They're at a bar that I don't know how to communicate. I can't get there. I felt everybody around me was smarter and more intentional, and they knew more stuff about more things, and they knew, like, I don't know, like the level of conversation was so high. So to start with myself, I think the first 2 months, I probably felt bad, just not like, can I do this? Can I really, like, it's great. Now I've seen it. Now I've seen what I could achieve, but can I actually achieve it? And then you kind of find your way. I was lucky. I took some people with me. So it was 3 of us. Joey and Bob came along, very startup-y. We slept in the same house together. Joey on the couch. He still makes fun of me for that. It was because Bob was my co-founder, so we both got the bedroom. Joey got the couch. Sorry, Joey. And we went back. So we were a startup in a startup. So we went back for 3 months, and the 3 of us we were hacking. We were like experimenting. We were trying to reinvent the wheel. Our whole omni-channel API idea, which back then we called the chat API, was our YC pitch. So this was 2016. We were already focused. So you're pitching
something that was beyond your company's current capabilities.
Yeah, that was it. We wanted to move.
So you're basically pitching VNext in a way.
Yeah. And then we had to take it back to the company, and probably made some mistakes there. I was fortunate that my COO Micah basically gave me the freedom to go to Silicon Valley. So I almost stayed. I mean, I went up and down a lot, but I stayed there for almost 2.5 years. And she was basically the CEO of the company in the Netherlands, where all the people were, together with my co-founders who led the tech part. And it gave me the freedom with a couple other people to go to Silicon Valley and go experience the dream.
Thanks, Micah.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. And what were you doing when you were out there? Were you developing product, or were you exploring the market?
Listening, meeting customers, understanding what they wanted to do. I wanted to meet when I went, but this started already at YC. One of the things I came into YC for, I wanted to speak to every partner. So you have your group partners, which are Aaron and Jarrett, and then you basically get to speak to everybody, and they have this system that you can basically have office hours with people. And I wanted everybody to know my name and to know, or more importantly, to know MessageBird's name and to know what we were about. So I spoke to somebody who was specialized in hardware, which had nothing to do with our business. And I extended that after YC. So first within YC, I got to know everybody. And then through them, I got to know more people, other founders. How did they build their business? What were mistakes that they made? I spoke to a lot of customers, like what are the new technological advantages? What is better tech? How should we lead the team? So I was just learning. I tried to push hard in the US market. I thought I could do it and I failed.
What does that mean?
I think back then we already wanted to go into the US. And I came to the conclusion that then I and a couple more people would have to move here. And we were going so fast on our other side that the risk reward was too tough for me. So I tried to do it all by myself, with the idea being recruiting people from my house, doing job interviews and just going back to scratch. That was too hard. That was too tough to do, because fortunately the business was already growing so quickly that I was trying to do like two things at the same time. So then I went back, and I was like, I'll come back here one day, but for now we're going to continue driving, and we continued driving the growth
from the Netherlands.
From the Netherlands.
Yeah, was there benefit in there as well? In the Netherlands, you could have moved part of the company to the US, right?
Which some do, right? Some reset all the way in the U.S. just because of that
or
single
set up a
homogenous
big,
market.
The honest truth is, I probably would have if the company was smaller.
No.
That's unfortunately. I would love to say differently.
In a way,
it's
success was preventing you from making a decision like that.
It's just it's different scale. It's different bar. I mean, it's part of the reason why I'm very passionate about getting that bar here. Because I think there is a bar difference. I think we should be truthful about it. There's just a difference between people who have seen it before and have seen scale. And in Europe, we're doing this for the first time. So yes, we have amazing European companies, and this is evolution of time, right? So in 10 years, my words today will mean nothing, because there will be lots of people who have experienced it before, and we will be building this ecosystem, and we should continue to drive it. But I think 5 years ago, there were much less big European tech companies. And if they were there, they were companies that were built in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
So, and Silicon Valley has people from 20 years ago who were product manager at Google or Apple. It's a difference. It's a difference between experience and having to reinvent the wheel. A lot of people here have to reinvent the wheel, but we chose to stay here, and we're very happy about it. And now we're trying to change the status quo here, which is just as much fun.
Well, there's a foray into the U.S. that's pretty significant. Not so long, maybe April or so, just recently, that you made a small acquisition of a big U.S. player, I would say. So is that your returning, or is that more you're like, oh no, this is not about one market, it's about the world?
I mean, it's always been about the world for us. It's never been about the Netherlands or Europe or anything. It's always been. I mean, our revenue is actually split about a quarter between Europe, U.S., Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Or actually Latin America and Africa, so the rest of the world. So we've been a pretty global company. But yeah, the U.S. was lacking, and that's a very specific market with specific communication styles. WhatsApp isn't the thing there. The way telecom works, which we historically came from, works completely different. It's the one country in the world where it works completely different than the other 179 countries. So it's a tough market. But we thought email was a great entry point, and we had the opportunity to acquire literally world's largest email provider, sending over 5 trillion emails.
Yeah, I saw it. Trillion. Just in case anyone wants to put that out.
No, it's insane.
Trillion.
They do 40% of all commercial email in the world.
Jeez.
That's not even, I don't even know how to put that in my head.
Yeah, it's an insane scale. So yeah, it's a nice entry point for us to go into the US. But this is, again, for us, this is all a journey. So we're not doing anything like crazy tomorrow or all sorts of plans. I mean, but in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll build significant presence in the United States.
But I mean, you have a substantial competitor in the US. Does that frighten you when they're given their capitalization, given their presence? What is it that you think defines you and sets you apart in that competitive space? Is it still the tech?
I mean, first of all, I would say there's lots of competitors, and the one you're mentioning are our red friends. I still decline to mention their name. No, I'll stop being annoying. No, look, Twilio's amazing. Jeff's amazing. Great company. I think, first of all, there's many players in our space, and that's just the one that's known, and that is very highly valued, and rightfully so. They're doing amazing things. I think we're after a little bit of a different opportunity potentially, even though those things could converge or not. But I think we're looking at the space much more from a perspective of how we can have impact on communication to customers. So this is where the customer focus is going to come back. And then with a complete vertical integration approach. So we want to go, or we are going from API infrastructure all the way to applications, no code in between. We want from everybody from a developer to a analytical business person to an IC to a whole team of agents to be able to use our software. And we want that to be one machine. So this is where all the integrations need to become one, and it needs to be one machine. And for us, our time window to achieve this is also very long. So I'm willing to take 5 years, 10 years, 20 years for us to get there. But this is where the world will go. And if we want to become one of the greats in the world and in communications, which is a very disparate industry, then that's our road to sort of get there. And that goes beyond what Twilio is doing with APIs. I mean, then you could call Zendesk a competitor, or Genesis, or Trade.io, or Zapier, or there's so many companies, or Salesforce, but we'll have. What you'll see, I think in the next 6 to 12 months is we're going to start having our own approach to the world of comms, and we'll do some really exciting stuff, which I think people will more clearly see the differentiation than today. But we don't spend that much time with competitors. It's a waste of your time.
Oh, good for you.
So I want to touch on what you say to me. I translate, not in the exact words, but in the concept level, this mindset that you're using as you explain things to us. In a sense, you mentioned the evolution that Y Combinator gave you in terms of breaking from one set, like looking at the world in the bigger sense. One of the critiques I have of the Dutch ecosystem is I meet so many entrepreneurs who think too small. And my analogy is if you set out to build a house, you'll build a house. But if you want to build a skyscraper, you better get some different plans. But I'm looking at your face and guessing you might have a point of view on this. What do you see, and how did you get to this, and maybe others can follow?
And how do you keep the bar up for yourself?
Okay, here we go.
Wait, let me take the cap off.
Yeah,
all right, let's go.
That's about. I'm like thinking, like, how far am I going to go?
Yeah, just go all the way.
Yeah,
just go dig deep in the foundations of the skyscraper.
Like I mean, first of all, we have amazing talent, right? So let's start with the pilot. We have amazing talent. We've built amazing companies. Look at the past 12 months. Look at what's happening around us. There's so many companies getting funded and building great tech. And so I would say, in broad-based, I agree, and I'll get into it of what I think some of the things we could do better. But I think for a small country with 60 million people in the European tech scene and how we're competing, I think we're doing a really, really good job, and I think we should all be very proud of ourselves. I think what I don't like is things like lack of ambition, laziness, not service-oriented, not aggressive enough, wanting to win the Netherlands, wanting to win the Benelux. These people even know what the Benelux is. And if you think starting a tech company is about being nice and going for beers with other people and talk about tech, then you have no idea what's going on in Silicon Valley. Almost every single successful tech company that I know, also based in the Netherlands, is heads down focused on the business. You never see them on bottles or other types of stuff. They're focused on working for customers, building great tech, and that's a 24/7, 7-day-a-week job. And I think...
Yeah, we just skewered like 20 cultural norms right there. So good start.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, like I was advising some tech founders, and one of them asked me like, okay, so how should I feel if I'm starting a tech company? How should I feel about taking holidays? And I was like, how dare you even ask that question to me? Do you have any idea what it takes? Do you know how hard it is to build a big tech company? Do you think you can go on holiday? Like, that's not how this stuff works. And it's not to say that you shouldn't go on holiday or that I'm like pendulum all the way to the right and that you should have no work-life balance. You should do all that stuff. And you should be, if you have a family, you should be a great father or mother to your children. And like there's a compromise. Building a tech company is really hard, and and it's tough and there's a lot of competition. So and it doesn't matter how amazing your tech is, and building a company is not about product, it's about execution. So yes, you need a great product. Yes, you need technical ability to do that. But business is all about execution, and execution takes time and learning and falling and standing back up. And so I think, yeah. But this to me goes broader than the Dutch. This is a European thing. I think people would be shocked.
Probably also not all of the US is like Silicon Valley as well.
No, it's a Silicon Valley thing. It's not a, you find it differently in other states. Yeah. But if you're...
There's a hyper-competitive in the coasts as they deal with but like in the center, not quite the same.
Yeah.
So now when you're, after this, I feel extremely uncomfortable. Obviously, as with TechLeap, we're trying to build an ecosystem where people meet and connect and support each other, and then where investors, find founders and founders help each other out, and you tell me that they shouldn't be doing that. They should just be kind of putting their head down in building their product. Whereas actually, you also said you went to Silicon Valley to learn to speak to others, and so. How do you combine the two? How much time would you set apart from kind of building the business and learning from others, and growing your capabilities as a leader of a startup?
Well, and this is not just because you're sitting across from me, by the way. And so then I'm not going to completely correct my words, but I would say from my perspective, the way I look at TechLeap, it's much more focused on the community, or it's very focused on the community building, which I think is a good thing, not a bad thing. And it always has good speakers, and I've spoken.
Great speakers.
I've spent time, and I know other founders have, and there's the combination also with YC. I think I'm much more speaking broadly. It's not about never. This is the thing, right? It's none of what I'm saying is like binary. It's not all the way to the right or all the way to the left, but it's much more like I know a lot of people who go to every Borrel every single week to go meet other tech people. I think then if you're building a tech company, you should not have time to go to a Borrel to go meet other tech people. You should be building your startup, and you pick a few people that you want to learn from and focus there. It's not about having Friday drinks every single time. Now, I actually think it's an interesting bridge, because one of the things that I found that was so unique in the Valley was that actual always be networking. When people had like a poker game at night, the conversation was on work. It was like, what's the new tech? What's the new this? What's the new that? And, in here, and this is not a judgment, because I'm going to sound very judgmental here, but like in here, it's much more about like soccer or sports or other types of things. And it's just... I can only share my experience from what I've seen, and I think there's clear data that's clearly working for the Valley. People are mostly busy with work, and they're busy with other tech companies, and they're always in the know on the latest tech or what next thing that's coming out, or whether there's a new programming language or a new ability to do something, or it's just and that's very, very important, I think. Where I'm very against is just like chilling with each other and that it's more about the beer than about the work environment of doing it. It's just that it's not my style. Let's put it that way.
If I dare to translate a little, I think one of the things you're saying, correct me please, is that if you take this colloquial or this regional sort of view of the world, you're going to you're almost doomed to fail in a sense, because the competition is doing as you described. They're out there
kick
working.
Your ass.
Yeah, they're out there 24/7 on and this is not just the U.S., by the way. It's a lot of other countries that would play into that same definition: Israel, China, et cetera, et cetera. So you're basically, in a way, you're sort of raising a red warning flag to other CEOs to say, if you ever want to run a global company or something that has a significance, listen to this bit, because it's real and you just haven't seen it yet. Is that a fair translation? It's
a super fair translation. And I would go beyond that, if you just look at the Netherlands in 10, 20 years and just like GDP and how are we competitive in the world, I think we should, be careful, because, if you look at food and beverage, whether it's Uber or Gorillas, or you look at banking, N26 or Revolut, or any like foundational industries. So first of all, we've already sold off, and I'm not going to say that government should own everything, but like we're selling off foundational infrastructure, whether that's like real estate or other types of things. Like it's basically becoming foreign owned. And then what tech is going to do is which is mostly also foreign owned, tech is going to disrupt things. And it's the law of like scale and money. The more scale and the more money you have, you can take bleeders in a country just to own the country, right? So what you're going to create is that like Amazon's going to come here and like going to cause trouble for sure. They will cause trouble. And I'm like a huge supporter of Coolblue, and I hope Coolblue wins, but it's going to be a tough battle. Same with banking, same with food and delivery. I think I'm really scared in some way where this is going to end up, because consumer behavior will be driven by convenience. So it's very convenient to get Gorillas to deliver me stuff at my house in 15 minutes. What now has happened is I don't go to my local convenience store anymore. And that's tough, because that's Dutch entrepreneurship. And they're going to go into like meat, and now next I won't be going to my butcher anymore, and next I won't be going to XYZ anymore. And it's the same with Amazon. Like next we won't be going into stores anymore, and next we won't be going into anything. And then I think where my fear is not that like I'm not against, I believe in free markets and all sorts of so like, but it's just we need to realize that this is going to happen, and we just don't see it yet because it's still early. But this will 100%, in my opinion, guaranteed happen, that these companies will completely take over the Netherlands, and they will all be foreign owned. So my warning flag would be much more like we're in a competition, we're in a war in some respect. And if we want to own parts of if we want to own these businesses in our economy, we should all be starting businesses and trying to compete, because I think you could have an edge if you're able to compete on a local level. So this is where I think localization actually does make sense. I think somebody like Bunk or Coolblue has a real competitive edge compared to outsiders coming in, because they have localized it so specifically that they might have a chance to win. But I think there's just so many industries that we have to be careful for.
So basically, you're saying it'll be disrupted anyway. So the stores are going to die. It just depends on who's going to kill them. If it's Amazon or it's a local player. And if it's Amazon, we also lose the data, and we also lose control, and we lose much more than
Yeah, the stores will die. So let it be Dutch owned and Dutch entrepreneurs who then own them, because we will take care of our economy and our. I mean, I don't want to go as far as Americans first, Dutch first, but a little bit. Like we can be a little bit more nationalistic about what we own and don't own. Like if we sell off all our infrastructure and just think of evolution, what's going to happen in 50 years? Like we don't own anything anymore.
Or at least innovate your way through the problem. I mean, I think part of what you're saying is, look, someone's going to do it. Why can't it at least be us? And then you mentioned talent, you mentioned capability. I asked about mindset. So you're just saying it's possible. Why don't we just step into and through this problem rather than waiting for it to happen to us? Yeah.
You're concerned about these things. I see that. That very few of your colleagues are really that much concerned with what's happening in the medium long term, in terms of the countries, regions, and they're just focusing on their business, and they don't really care that much.
It doesn't come up as much.
Is this something? Are you passionate about this?
Yes.
Sorry, you're not clear. What was that? This bothers me.
I've seen the other. I've just seen the other side, and I know how ruthless Silicon Valley is. This is not it's a ruthless mindset, and it's for good. Like it's not that like these founders are looking to destroy the Netherlands or kill us, but like they have a winner takes all mentality. Yeah. YC is a winner takes all mentality. How do you build a $100 billion startup? They're not interested in somebody building.
And the world is the playground, not the local country. Not even the U.S. is the limit for these countries. They don't. I mean, these companies, they literally don't start with any version of saying, "Wow, if we get this in a couple of countries, we'll have a nice little business."
Yes. So we need to like grab the horns by the bull, or what is it? The bull by the horns.
The bull by the horns.
Did you grab the bull by the horns?
roll by the balls and go get something done.
Yeah, like go, let's go. Gorillas, why are we letting them win?
I'm not from Texas. No,
I don't know what the company's called.
Southern.
There's a company in Utrecht who I forgot what their name is. I would have loved to give them some credit here, but it's trying to compete with Gorillas. They're like, yeah, we should give them all our money. Like Dutch governments, like start giving Cool Blue money. Start giving, like, I'm serious. Like we should.
You're not talking about Crisp. No, you're talking about the local.
It's not Crisp and Picnic, but there's literally a Gorillas competitor, which I think now is still in Utrecht, or maybe they're expanding. But let's give them lots of money and let them build it. And at least when the convenience stores all go, or maybe they can become suppliers to all of this. And we should think about this more as an ecosystem or a community where all the convenience stores come together and they survive, but they work together and they become the drop-off spots for that, instead of like these small little buildings that Gorillas is now going to use. And you know, it's going to be complete unfair competition because capital is so cheap that these companies will have such an ability to raise capital over and over and over again, and the world's printing money. So I don't know, who knows where that's going to go. So like, it's just, there's endless money. So like, they can just buy everything. It's not about profitability or building a great business. And I think especially in a small country like Netherlands, you got to be really, really careful because we don't have a lot of other things. Our historical nature is trade and working together with other regions. But I think we need to have a little bit more of an ownership mentality for the next 50 to 100 years in order to win.
You use the term bleeder country, which basically in your reference means, okay, you're big enough that you can have some that are not profitable for you, but you do it because someday you're going to use it strategically or for some other reason.
Yes.
Yeah. We didn't touch on investment yet.
We did not. There's capital, but
obviously we talk a lot about capital, but I think we should address it a bit.
Yeah, I think it'd be good people to understand the story and the decision process.
You have actually raised quite considerable amounts of capital, so we assume that you are good at it, and that you had a very deliberate strategy, and that our listeners will be very interested in actually knowing how, what, and why, and when of your funding strategy. You
interesting.
Take us there.
Sure. All right, I'll start giving some credit. So I definitely wasn't good at it. One of my, a year after YC, we had gotten an acquisition offer from a big competitor, and you know, and I think, let me actually, to start off with funding, it's actually interesting. I think the first thing in order to be able to get funding is you got to have ambition. It's the part that people forget. Like, because when you're putting money into another business, nobody's trying to make 3x or 5x or 10x. They want to make 100x. So that you need to have the ambition as a founder or a founding team to actually want to be able to get there, because then you can attract the really, really great investors. And we had a story where we'd had a couple of acquisition offers, one really, really serious one by a main competitor, and we decided to say no. And then the decision-making process was like, okay, so if we're going to have the balls to say no, for wealth and, you know, all sorts of reasons that you could say yes, but we just didn't want to sell. And we thought we were having too much fun. And we were like, okay, but then we're also building a real business. So then we need to go out and win. And then to win, we needed more capital. I can't remember, but we were doing 5 or 10 million in profits at that point. So we were like serious business, but like not at like, it was very hard for us to see a path to like 10xing or 100xing that.
Just hold that, because I think that's fundamentally crazy important here in the Netherlands, which is there's a decision that was made that was, oh, this is nice, what we have coming in, oh, it's profitable, but that is not enough, because that wasn't what we set out to do. We didn't set out to build a small lifestyle company. We set out to conquer something or make something significant. And then you make the decision, we're profitable, but we're going to go raise money.
Yeah, we wanted to win. So this had nothing, I mean, for us, it wasn't about more money. It was much more about, we wanted to win. And to win, we needed more money because we had to scale way more quickly. I think we were 50 people. And, you know, we needed 100 more people to be able to go out and win and open new geos and more geographies. And we wanted to take more risk. And, you know, if you're a bootstrap profitable company, then I think the risk is that we always put all our money back into the business. So we always had that point. But like, if you wanted to go even bigger, then you would take too much risk, and it was a risk reward decision. So we wanted to go big. And then on the funding raising, I met one of the partners at YC, Justin Kahn. He was the founder of Twitch. Amazing guy, amazing founder, amazing person, but amazing human. And he's really good at capital raising. And I'd asked him to listen to my pitch. And he basically said, Robert, your pitch sucks. This is terrible. And like he beat me very hard. And we worked together on the pitch and on the story. And probably the key thing that I learned was you have to tell investors something that they don't already know, which was something very important. And in our case, we had to show like that we were very technical, but that we also had the ambition. So there was actually one of our slides was the day in the life of an Uber message. And what we showed was that, yeah, there was lots of people in messaging and there was lots of SMS, but what we did differently was solve a really hard problem, and we built the best technology to be able to go out and win. That was key learning for me. And since then, I'm maybe not. I mean, we were very fortunate. I mean, we've always been able to attract the best of the best investors, and we've always been able to raise capital. For the first time, we raised 60 million. I think we did it in a few weeks. We raised the Series B round, which was an inside round, which was my current investors. We were just working too hard and didn't want to go out to the market, so we got our current investors to put more money in. Then we did a Series C last year, roughly this time, raising 200 something million, and then less than 9 months later, we raised another 800 million. So we've raised, I honestly don't know the exact number, a little over $1 billion to date.
You make it sound easy.
Times have changed. I mean, if you think about it, when we raised the Series A, it was 60 million. That was the largest Series A in the history of Europe at that time. That's a jokingly amount right now. People would laugh about that metric, and that's only 4.5 years ago.
But not here in the Netherlands, they won't. That's a big A.
No, but now
still a big A. Here.
Yeah, but you have even had Live Kindly. They raised 500 in the first. I mean, these kind of amounts are now becoming. I mean, for Series A, obviously that's still outrageous.
No, I meant specifically for A because it's.
Yeah. But is that also because the kind of investors that are now coming to you? Is that a different set of investors? We heard a lot, of course, about Tiger Global and the Vision Fund and others, these hybrid funds coming in. Do you see that? Is that much different now? And how do you address those, or how do you assess those?
Look, at our scale, you become way more intentional. So there's just difference between venture and hedge funds, and what are you trying to achieve? And we actually allowed a lot of family offices to invest in the company, with the idea being that if and when we take the company public, never making that mistake again, that we would have investors that would share the long-term view. I think actually two points that I think are important. I think one, MessageBird has a control position. And we want to control the company in 20 or 30 years. So we want to build a legacy company. So we're not out this. We won't sell the company. You could give me $100 billion and I still won't sell the company. So we really want to build something for the long term. So we have time on our side. At the same time, we actually have to grow fast because that's how businesses work, and you have to do it. So we've set up a corporate structure to allow us to do it. So that's one. And then we find the investors that fit that structure. So family offices, long-term strategic investors. So when we raised the Series A, Excel and Atomico had actually just raised their funds in the same year. So funds have a life cycle of 10 years, and we wanted to make sure that we at least had those 10 years. So we didn't want to be in year 3 or 4 of a life cycle of a fund. So very detailed on what we wanted to achieve. Now, what I would say for the Netherlands, because that's actually a point I wanted to make, is we really need to up our investor game here. And look, I'm not the bar because I don't invest in startups and stuff like that, and maybe I should, or maybe other founders should. But let's say the expert investors, the terms are shit. They're lazy. They're not quick enough. And the Americans are going to kick our asses. And that's what's happening. We never took any capital from Dutch investors. Most startups these days aren't taking money from Dutch investors, the great ones at least, the ones that are scaling really, really quickly. And a large part has to do with terms. Dutch investors often want 30-40% of your business, which is something completely insane, crazy, that they should stop doing. They want control, so they want to be involved in decision-making processes. And that is so 180-degree different than how Silicon Valley works. Silicon Valley is people think, okay, how could you raise 60 million in 7 days? I mean, because people make a quick decision. I came there on a Monday. They liked the idea. I met some of the partners on, I believe it was a Wednesday. They liked more of the idea. Then I had a pre-partner meeting on a Friday, and then most investors have their actual partner meeting on a Monday. So then I pitched Monday, and they gave me a term sheet that evening. So 7 days end to end. That's like a very quick decision make. Then you negotiate the term sheet, and then you sign it, and you're done. It's like very, very quick and efficient. And partially that's because I was in Silicon Valley, so I might have had the network and stuff like that. But I think I hear founders here spending 3 months raising capital from Dutch investors. And
no, it's 3 months is short.
3 months is
that's insane. Make a decision. Either you like the business or you don't like the business. Either the business is going to go 10x or 100x, or it's not. Like, these are pretty binary things. Like, you believe or you don't believe. I'm completely against all these like controls of like, no, I want to make decisions on how much money you invest or how you build your management team. If you don't trust the founder or the founding team, don't invest. If you do trust them, give them the money and let them go build a business. Like, it's. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
that's clear.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
But again, economy. Like, sorry, just to go back to this again. I think it's fun. The reason again I'm passionate and a bit aggressive on this because it's foundational to our economy. If I would have loved to have had Dutch investors that would have approached us this way, and this goes for me to the service industry as well. Banks. We're as a MessageBird is moving away from the Dutch banks into global banks because the Dutch banks can't service us. People know that we want to go do an IPO one day. You would think that they would be in our back garden pitching us, right? I've never gotten a single presentation from any of the banks. All the ECMs, like, eat your heart out. Like, it's just, I don't understand why. Like we need to like up our game here if we want to go compete, because we have great companies, we have great founders, we have great tech. We just need to up our game as on this to be able to do that. Why? Yeah. Okay.
Not to
now
call
I'll
out
really
the
stop.
obvious here, but what happens in this model, as you describe it, as it is that the people who will make money upon any sort of liquidity event, let's call it IPO, is going to be founders and players that are in the company and the investors. And those investors can either be Dutch, or you're going to be creating wonderfully, incredibly successful Dutch companies that are making money for American or Israeli or Chinese investors. And that's not a national comment as much as you don't have to, as long as you're willing to add a little risk and give a little more freedom to these like really smart entrepreneurs, because they're coming from the Netherlands. They're just getting their money from somewhere else.
Yes.
So I'm just adding a layer to what you were saying. It's if I'm being interviewed myself.
Well, you can take back control.
Yes.
Start interviewing.
That's okay.
And maybe do some rapid fire.
Okay,
questions.
so we're going to hit a few questions that just come quick, and you don't have to answer.
Can I be more
long
smiley
sentences.
now? I feel like I'm sounding very aggressive and like mean to. I can't walk the streets tomorrow anymore.
We'll
Look,
be
the
back,
worst
we'll
thing-
be back off a few meters.
Look, generally the worst thing in any leadership or role is to not have an opinion, right? Like, so you have an opinion, so thanks for that. Look, so a few just quick ones, and you just throw out whatever you want. If you could go back in time and you get 15 minutes with you somewhere early on MessageBird, and you're like going to give some lessons, what would you tell yourself?
It's like mistakes and lessons are like two things that like you make so many mistakes and you learn so many things that there's never like a couple of things to me that are super important. Like fall, get back up, fall, get back up, fall, get back up, fall, get back up, and keep going forward. Like Frank Slootman has this great quote, right? Like you're either in the elevator going down, you're standing still, or you're going up. You just want to be in the elevator going up. And that's like my approach to most things in life and business. Just try to find a way to go up.
Remind yourself, get back up, get back up.
Yeah, get back up. Like no matter, like as a founder, things get dark and scary, and you know, there's a whole side of this that people don't talk about, and like, but I think you fall, you get back up. You fall, you get back up.
And is there any one or two decisions somewhere along the way that you were like super convicted on, but you turned out to be completely wrong?
A little bit similar answer, because there's just so many, honestly. And it's not about because the reason that I would steer away from this is because it's not about an individual mistake. It's like I made hundreds of mistakes, and some of them have had real life consequences. And you know, there's many things you do wrong, but you fall, you get back up. You just have to learn from your mistakes. I think you want to create a culture in your company where it's also okay to make mistakes, especially if you're trying to push boundaries. There isn't a singular mistake that I made that I thought I would have done different, that I was super convinced on.
So get back up.
Yeah.
So if you could pick anyone, living or dead, to get advice from, who would it be?
Ooh. I mean, look, there's probably some obvious ones that I would just quickly say, like, I would love to spend some time with Bezos or Musk or Steve Jobs. I mean, those are just, creators, they're makers of this world. But I think I'd be more interested in talking to like Nelson Mandela or Gandhi or Mother Teresa on like how they saw like evil and the worst in the world and continue to find strength to continue. I think that's just something that really, really fascinates me as a person. I think that's so fascinating. Like how can you be so strong in life? And then as it relates to business, it's just something you deal with in business. Like continue to be strong and continue to go forward. So I would pick them, but there's like, there's many great tech founders that I would choose to, because I think they're interesting.
You're known for saying you have to have a relentless prioritization. You got to make hard choices. So in the course of kind of wrapping this up, any advice that you would give or anything you want to say, because out there listening are hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't know yet, people who are doing this for the first time.
Where's your ambition? Where are the 100,000s, the millions?
I mean, there are nearly 1 billion people who are possibly listening, and they're going to hear your words. So, like in that sort of focus, what is your 1 or 2 points of advice besides, because we've got the get back up part? What would you say? What's your worst?
Focus on your top 3 priorities and continue to focus on them. It's actually a YC lesson that I learned from other founders is like people will push you in 1,000 directions, from having coffees with you or tell you it's important to do this or that, and a lot of those things are really, really important, but you got to focus on what I call the red dot. And the red dot is like, what is the like singular most important thing you could be spending your time on? And you have to be intentional with your time if you're trying to scale a business really quickly. And the way that I do it is every day I think about my top 3 priorities and I always focus on those. And that can be really tough in working with other people, because for somebody else, my priority 4 might be their priority 1, which you create into tough situations sometimes. But it works for me really well. I just focus on my top 3 and I'm relentless about it and I don't deviate from it.
Robert, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here and just having the time and sharing. I'm so glad you're so transparent. It's really helpful.
And aggressive.
Come on. It's so not nice. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to The Scale Lab, a podcast brought to you by TechLeap. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please share it on your network via social media and give us your feedback. See you on the next episode.